You live by the sword, you die by the sword. As fight fans, this quote is what we want all MMA bouts to look like. Two fighters going head to head in the stand-up, trading massive shots until one of them eventually falls to damage, or they end up looking like they need to get facial reconstruction surgery. This is what brings us real excitement in the thrill of the fight. When we think of who the most exciting UFC fighter is, there's probably a wide range of names that you can think of. Conor McGregor with his slick precision that backed up all of his trash talk leading up to the featherweight title. Maybe an Anderson Silva pulling off his tricks and games before knocking out his opposition. Chandler, Charles, maybe Poirier come to mind. Yet most of these guys have had their fair share of boring fights. So who is the most exciting fighter? Who's the one that's always willing to live by the sword and die by the sword? The one who consistently throws it all on the line for the sake of the fans. That one guy on the card that will make you change your mind into buying a pay-per-view. Well, I think I found the answer. And I got the numbers to prove it. We're now about 13 years into Justin Gaethje's pro MMA career, and he's been quite the fighter. Before entering the UFC, Justin Gaethje held an undefeated pro MMA record and was the current lightweight champion of the World Series of Fighting, which is now the PFL. But adding more spice to his undefeated pro record was that of his 17 professional fights before the UFC, 16 of them ended by finish. The man has been fighting like it's kill or be killed since forever. But how did this fighting style transition into the UFC? Did Justin Gaethje maintain this same ferocity, or did he just want to keep that O? Well, throughout the 7 years in his UFC career, the numbers speak volumes. While his 8-5 record may not seem the best, a closer look reveals Gaethje's true fighting spirit. In those 13 UFC bouts, he's added a total of 6 knockouts to his resume, and 2 decisions which easily could have been contenders for Fight of the Year. These showcase his willingness to go toe-to-toe with anyone, anytime, anywhere. And even in defeat, Gaethje remains true to himself, having never lost a fight by anything other than a finish. It's no wonder he has the same amount of post-fight bonuses as fights in the UFC. Justin Gaethje doesn't just show up to fight. He arrives on his own terms, willing to bring the pain whether they want it or not. And this, of course, is reflected in his striking numbers. Justin Gaethje boasts an impressive, significant strike output of 6.78 strikes landed per minute. Now, if this number doesn't seem high, let's put some perspective into it. Here's a chart of UFC lightweights ranked by significant strike output for fighters that have had at least 5 fights and have fought after Gaethje's debut. At the bottom of this list, you see some of the lightweights that aren't too comfortable on their feet. Claudio Puelles takes the cake on the least aggressive lightweight. Keep climbing, and you'll start noticing some more aggressive fighters. Arman Tsarukyan, for example, despite his wrestling base, finds himself over here, near the middle. But the real people that stand out on this list, the most aggressive lightweights, are Bobby Green, Justin Gaethje, and Ignacio Bahamondes. Despite being only second on this list though, we have to remind ourselves that Justin Gaethje achieved this strike output while fighting the cream of the crop at lightweight. The man is this aggressive, and he hasn't fought anyone outside of the top 10. Now, let's take a look at his other strike output. The strike output he receives from everyone else. Because just as good as Justin Gaethje's offense is, his strikes absorbed per minute, a stat which shows how often you get hit, is also really high. The highest among any lightweight in the UFC, standing at 7.46 strikes per minute. But wait, hold on. 7.46 strikes absorbed per minute means that his significant strike output is actually less than his significant strike absorption. As a matter of fact, Justin Gaethje is one of the only lightweights in the top 10 that have a negative strike output to strike absorption differential, and by a wide margin. Even Michael Chandler, even he doesn't have a negative significant strike output to strike absorption differential, showing that statistically, Justin Gaethje is willing to throw it all down and isn't scared of the punishment. He just accepts it as part of the game. Despite his do-or-die fighting style that may seem messy and uncalculated, Justin Gaethje's strike accuracy is actually really impressive. A quick look at his significant strike distribution shows that he lands his strikes at an amazing 59% accuracy, with a head strike accuracy of 49%. Now, for those of you who've been following this channel closely, 49% head strike accuracy is really good. In fact, it's so good that if we plot out head strike lands as a function of attempts for UFC lightweights with a 350 significant strike minimum, and check the fighters who are closest to this line, which is the 100% line, then you can see that Justin Gaethje is the second most accurate headhunter in the UFC lightweight division, outlanding even Khabib, who lands most of his head strikes grounded. All of Justin Gaethje's striking stats seem to all point to the fact that he is one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting fighter in the lightweight division. But we have to wonder why. Why does Justin Gaethje deliberately try to beat everyone on the feet? Justin Gaethje has a D1 wrestling pedigree. You'd figure that throughout these 7 years in the UFC, he might have used it at least a few times, right? Michael Chandler's used his wrestling in most of his UFC fights. Justin Gaethje, however, is not Michael Chandler, because despite having a strong wrestling base, Justin Gaethje clocks his combined control time for all of his fights at around 4.5 minutes, meaning he only had 4.5 minutes of control time for all of his 13 fights in the UFC, making it one of the lowest control times clocked in the lightweight division. When asked about this lack of wrestling, his response was simple. It gets you tired. If I'm gonna get tired, I'd rather it be from fighting and not from wrestling. Adding also, it wouldn't be fun for me. So, how exciting is Justin Gaethje? In my opinion, he's the most exciting fighter in the UFC. The violence he puts out every time he steps into the octagon, his willingness to always try to end the fight, and even if he can't, still somehow gets a performance bonus. It's mind-boggling. And yet, even in defeat, Justin Gaethje never disappoints in embracing being on the opposite end of a highlight reel. We're talking about a guy whose striking aggression has become one of the best in the division, and in some sort of crazy sign of heart, is trumped by his strike absorption rate, and doing it all while fighting top 10 talent. The highlight might just be the best way to describe Justin Gaethje. After his loss to Max Holloway at UFC 300, Justin Gaethje said he'll be taking at least 6 months recovery until he steps back into the octagon. And honestly, I kind of agree with his decision. Even though his chin is great and he's taken many hard shots again and again, even this needs time to heal. As fans, we should be thankful for him. At 35 years old, his time might be coming to a close. But if there's anything that fight fans should remember him by, is that Justin Gaethje really does live by the sword and die by the sword. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like the content, feel free to subscribe, like or share the video, and leave a comment down below for discussion. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. And just a quick note, this will probably be my last video that I have for a while, as I have other commitments that I have to deal with for the next few months, so yeah, I'll see you in a few months.